you everyone for joining us today as I live my game show host fantasies. As you know, we are hiring a new city administrator, and we have 4 wonderful finalists here tonight. We want to provide an opportunity for the public to hear from them directly, and so that they can become familiar with our candidates as we decide who we want to be our next administrator. We have 4 questions that we're going to ask to start off, and if there's some time, then we will have an opportunity to take questions from the audience. This is being recorded. I know there's people that are watching online right now. It will be available on demand later as well. Let's see. We're going to ask the questions of each person, and we're going to keep the same order. It's going to be alphabetical order, but we will start with a different person for each question, so everyone has a chance to answer first. We are giving people 3 minutes to answer. I'm not sure if you know that, but we will give you a warning when you have 30 seconds left. Sarah will hold up a sign for you. I just want to make sure that we're not here until midnight. So we'll give people 3 minutes to answer the questions. And with that, we will get started. And we're going to do alphabetical order by last name. So we're going to start with Chad Brecklin for this first question. And they did have the questions ahead of time. We're not putting them on the spot like that, just so you know. And so the first question: why do you want to be the City of Fitchburg's next city administrator, and how has your education, training, and experience prepared you for this position?
Thank you very much, Mayor Richardson, and thank you everybody for coming this evening to meet all the finalists. I appreciate you spending the time in doing so. So I'll respond to this question by first sharing my education, training, and experience, how that has prepared me for the position, and then why I would like to be Fitchburg's next city administrator. First and foremost, I'll start with education. I have an associate's degree in police science, a bachelor's degree in public administration, and a master's degree in business administration. I've had the opportunity to have several training experiences during my time here in Fitchburg, most notably 3 leadership and command or executive level development courses, one being the Northwestern University School of Police Staff and Command, the next Leadership in Police Organizations that was put on by the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and then finally I've completed the FBI National Academy as well. I began my full-time public service in 1995 as an Oregon police officer. 22 years ago this month, I began my service in the city of Fitchburg as a police officer. I've served in several roles in the police department to include sergeant, lieutenant, and I've been the 3rd ever city police chief since January 2018. As police chief, I think I've developed several relevant experiences that relate to the city administrator job, that being accountable for providing fair, professional, and impartial service to our community, preparing and managing departments' operating and capital budgets, collaborating with the mayor, city administrator, other department heads, liaisoning with elected officials, and attending city council meetings and commission meetings and other committee meetings when necessary. I represent the department in collective bargaining negotiations as well as any other contract-related matters. And of course, I'm responsible for ensuring employee development, assessment, and accountability, and all employment-related decisions within the police department. I think that my depth of education, training, and experience makes me a uniquely qualified candidate for this position. Through my service, I've been able to become aware of the challenges and opportunities within all neighborhoods of our community, and I understand and appreciate the diversity of perspective and the expectation that our community has for professional city services. I'm visible in the community, and I believe that I've earned the respect of many community members and stakeholders. I think all of this has provided me with the drive, the energy, and a balanced perspective, as well as a vision that's been created by elected officials and city staff here at Fitchburg. As for why I want to be the city administrator or expressed an interest in this position, I see the city administrator role as an opportunity for continued challenge as a leader and continued professional and personal growth and development. In collaboration with elected officials and city staff, the city administrator role will allow me to participate in defining and shaping the mission, vision, and values of city operations.
Sorry to interrupt, Chad, but that is your 3 minutes. My apologies. And we did say, even though you're not seated in alphabetical order, we did say alphabetical order, so that would mean Matt, if you would go next, that would be great.
Thank you, Mayor. So my name is Matt Pro, and I am the City of Fitchburg IT Director. I have a bachelor's degree from UW-Madison in Behavioral Science and Law, and a master's degree from UW-Platteville in Project Management. I've been employed by the city for just under 17 years, the last 6 of which have been managing the IT operations of the city. One of the great benefits of working in IT is that we get to see the entire organization. That results in a strong understanding of the operations of all of our departments and the opportunity to build great working relationships with all of our staff and all of our department heads. That experience, along with the IT skill set of adaptability, critical thinking, creative problem solving, extreme multitasking, and the constant need to adapt and learn, all translate well to the role of city administrator. I'm interested in becoming the next city administrator because I'm dedicated to and passionate about the work we do here every day to make a positive impact on our community. I hope to expand my role here to have a greater influence on the city by leading our hardworking and dedicated team into the future. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. And Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Eric Renfleis. I'm currently the city administrator in Onalaska, Wisconsin, just north of La Crosse, from that part of the state. Population is about 20,000, so about 10,000 less than the Fitchburg area. I've been a city administrator in various communities within Wisconsin for the better part of a decade in the role. First started my career as city administrator in a small village of Edgar, Wisconsin, in north central Wisconsin, 1,500 people, and have now worked up my way to being administrator of a city of, like I said, 20,000. In a city of 15,000 people, I wore a lot of hats. So if it's HR, if it's public works, if it's public safety, legal, developments, zoning, elections, tax payments, budget preparation, did it all. Now I have the ability to actually supervise those that do those various things by title, by department head, and have had done so, like I said, for a decade. The role of the city administrator is critical, and the experience that everyone up here has, I think, speaks to the criticalness of that. But a city the size of 30,000 people, it is vital that someone fully understands how the relationship between the department heads and the common council and the elected officials work in the interactions with the public, and the vital role of that. When I graduated from school, I have an international relations degree, a bachelor's. Decided not to go on to grad school and instead enter the workforce, so I have 18 years of sales experience, territory management, business development, but lots of knocking on doors and interacting with people. But in 2003, I decided to begin service of the public where I lived in Sheboygan, that's my hometown, and ran for elected office and won. So in 2003, I was sworn in as an alder. Never was a mayor, but I do have from beginning in 2003, ending in 2011, elected office experience. So in terms of unique experience, I've been a city administrator thus far. I understand the relationship working with the department heads. As an former elected official, I understand the stresses that our current elected officials go through, the interactions with the public. I've had those phone calls at midnight. I've answered your calls when you have to reach out to your public official. So I really think I bring that unique experience. Why Fitchburg, since I have 30 seconds left? Quite frankly, there's very little about Onalaska that makes me want to leave. We have a great organization, great people there, but what makes me want to come to Fitchburg is exactly why you live in Fitchburg. The diversity that exists here, the dichotomy between rural, the opportunity has presented itself. I did work in Dane County previously, and I have experience here, but most importantly, my kids live here, and I'm hoping that...
All right, I'm going to cut you off there. Thank you. And Andre.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, good evening, and thank you. I come to the table with a number of years of mentoring experience in the community, serving the community, mentoring, park cleanups, working with the youth. I'm also adopting families during the Christmas time frame. Also, during the Thanksgiving time frame, we're also giving out food for those that need it. So I wanted to put that out there, that I don't mind being out in the community helping our constituents. As far as my qualifications are concerned, I have a PhD in education and leadership. I've also have a master's in management and science and a bachelor's in industrial engineering. As far as my qualifications, I have about 28 years of management experience in both the private and the public sector. That career would span from, on the private sector side of things, banking, healthcare, technical, airline operations, logistics operations management, call center, and credit bureau. So I understand the role of what it takes to lead an organization. On the public sector side of things, I have about 11 years supporting Department of Health for fiscal and contracts, the Illinois Department of Transportation, so I understand that they're a fair issue. The Department of Workforce Development, so assisting our constituents with landing jobs and getting them retooled and retrained. Also worked as a bureau director with the Department of Children and Families, supporting 71 counties and 11 tribal agencies for roughly 366,000 cases. I've worked for the Department of Corrections, monitoring 70,000 offenders throughout the state with a call center with roughly 80 individuals. And that's to ensure that our community remains safe. And that's to ensure that our communities are safe. Currently, I'm the supervisor for the City of Madison, Ward Utility, where I supervise customer service representatives, field service representatives, and field service analysts for, again, roughly 70,000 accounts. Why I want to be the City of Fitchburg city administrator, to contribute to the city, to apply my learned leadership skills and style to support staff and constituents, to be an instrument of change in a good way, to improve the city's residential and business communities, to address differences and help create a safe space for all city residents, and continue to get the work done. And also, the city of Fitchburg is growing, and I want to assist in the progression of the diversity and the change for our area. Also, I want to ensure that I bring my education and leadership and a variety of job experience that would lead me to the point in my life to continue learning, building relationships, filling the voids, whatever they may be. And my entire career has been in management. I've helped build organizations from the scratch. I've enjoyed working with people, learning from them, mentoring them. I've enjoyed volunteering and giving back to our community. And my personality allows me the ability to mediate, lead, take in all viewpoints, and move the organizations forward.
All right, perfect. I think that was just at 3 minutes. All right, second question. The City of Fitchburg is looking for someone who can promote and celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion. How have you done this? We'll start with Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. To me, promoting and celebrating diversity is to acknowledge the many ways in which we are diverse throughout our organization, whether that be age, race, ethnicity, gender identity, education, or any number of other traits. But more importantly, it's about placing a high value on those differences and allowing those differences to positively influence who we are as a team and how we approach our work and each other. Promoting equity in our organization is to ensure access, opportunity, and advancement for everyone who are part of all of these groups that I previously mentioned. It's about ensuring that everyone in the organization is on equal footing and has the same access to opportunities as everyone else. It's about fairness and equal treatment in every area of the organization, from hiring and promotional activities to access to the same level of technology and resources as everyone else. And finally, promoting inclusion can be the biggest challenge because it requires you to step into someone else's shoes. It's necessary to always think about who or whether other people in the organization feel that they belong and that they are a valued member of the team. You need to pay attention to the decisions that you make, particularly when those decisions impact our employees, because those decisions are the ones that may make others in the organization feel left out.
All right, thank you. Eric.
Story I told earlier, growing up with a mother and a family of boys and men. In the professional sector, she was a English major and went to work at an engineering firm as a public relations director. This is in the 70s and the 80s, and had some challenges. And we got to come witness sort of the behavior that was exhibited towards her and the challenges that she faced as she moved her way forward. So growing up, I told myself that any opportunity I had to change the world for people like my mother was very important to me. So I do actually have real-world experience where I've been able to do that at the organizations that I have worked. The most recent example is in Alaska. Of the 9 department heads, we had 2 women department heads. We are just one shy of half now in the years that I've been there. And it's not that we're purposely choosing just one candidate over the other, but it's really looking beyond what the resume says. It's looking at providing opportunities. It's looking at non-traditional experience and education, and making sure you find the right candidate that fits the position as best as possible, and giving people a chance. And if you're committed to that, you can make that difference. And I have done that in every stop that I have made by promoting as much as possible within, providing educational opportunities, and giving the opportunities to those that deserve them, regardless of where they stand in terms of diversity. Being in public service is truly a calling. If you don't really see it as a calling and it's just a career, and I think everyone up here will agree to that, there are other jobs to do it with far less stress, far less hours, and far less pain and agony. But once called to public service, I think everyone should have the ability to really thrive and live out that commitments to public service as much as possible. And as you already heard, the key is making sure you don't put up roadblocks where they don't exist. You eliminate roadblocks and you offer opportunities to those that deserve it, regardless of who they are.
All right. Thank you. Andre.
Thank you. I have to get used to the mic. I am currently a member of the City of Madison Equity, Diversity, and Inclusions Committee. I really enjoy the opportunity to discuss cultural differences, create a safe space for all, and have a meaningful dialogue that breaks down barriers. I would love to bring those ideas to the city. The community can benefit from learning about one another. All it takes is that spark, an initiative, and willingness from everyone. I grew up in the inner city of Chicago in a fatherless household. From there, when I graduated from high school and went off to undergrad, it was pretty much the first time that I've interacted with individuals from different cultural backgrounds. So I think it's very important to make sure that we're all comfortable with interacting with one another. And for me, again, just my personal lived experience, it was shocking because, again, you're seeing people that don't look like you. So as an adult, I vowed myself that I would always ensure that I'm able to make people feel comfortable when they're around me. And again, as I'm having meetings and discussions with my staff or with people that I meet for the first time, it's just all about being comfortable and again, creating that safe space where we can have meaningful dialogue with one another, regardless of where you are, what color you are, what your race or your gender is. From there, I think it's, again, important to break down these barriers, have these conversations, and again, be safe around the individuals that you're interacting with from day to day.
All right. Thank you. Chet.
Thank you. So obviously, I feel that it's quite important to consider diversity, equity, inclusion in all decision-making processes that we engage in and policies and ordinances that we enact throughout the city. From an actual application standpoint, I think that there are several examples that I can offer of work that I've done within my roles in the police department, also working in conjunction with other city staff to include human resources. For examples, through our hiring process with a goal of creating a department that is representative of the community it serves, we've done many things to include transitioning to a full application screening process to evaluate work and life experience versus simply using a written test to determine who advances in hiring processes. We've removed names from applications as we screen them so that we can potentially remove any biases there. We work to provide bias training to our panelists, and we've began including community members in hiring and promotional processes to, again, seek new perspectives as we evaluate candidates for serving in our community. And as far as team member development, awareness and perspective is increasingly valuable in our service to our community. We've worked to bring in training on anti-harassment, diversity, and inclusion. I've offered much support for the Diversity and Inclusion Employee Resource Group that's recently been started in the city. In fact, there are 2 police department members who are members of that group. We've also recently utilized a relationship that we've established with a local community-based organization to provide training to our team recently on how to interact with and provide services to a diverse community. And then from a development perspective, an interaction perspective, I've volunteered to be a member of the United Way Law Enforcement Leaders of Color Collaboration. That's a group that meets monthly where we're able to talk about issues in the Madison metropolitan area with a focus or emphasis on policing-related concerns or conversations. And then finally, from a personal note, I recently completed a course on Black history that's led by a community-based organization as well.
All right, thank you. All right, on to question 3. The community survey results that we did indicated that one of the most important traits for our next city administrator is integrity. The city administrator should demonstrate by word and action the highest standards of ethical conduct and integrity in all public, professional, and personal relationships. What does integrity mean to you, Eric?
I don't know if anybody took the opportunity to look at the names and do some Google searches before the evening started. If you did, and you Google search my name, City of Sheboygan and Mayor, you'll see that I have taken some very unpopular positions because in the name of integrity, ethics, and standards. Unaware that we had a mayor that had some difficulties, was in the public eye many times, including international news. And as council president at the time, I led the charge to ask the mayor to be removed. No offense, but it was called for. It was very unpopular. I mean, I had death threats on my phone at home, and it was very difficult to go out because he was a popular person in the city of Sheboygan, but it was the right thing to do. So I've committed myself, and again, being public service is a calling in my mind, but it's a calling that never ends. There is no hours that I'm not city administrator. Dining out, shopping, recreating, it doesn't matter. I'm always the city administrator. I'm always representing the city I work for, and it's something that I'm well aware of and have been aware of for way beyond a decade, even as an elected official, just based on my experience. Also to the point that if it's no longer right fit, if I can't continue to represent the city in an ethical and honest manner, then it's time to move on. So I've given a lot to be ethical, moral, and utilize integrity in my own career, and I've given up things that are very important to me in order to be that. But more on a personal, interactive level, I have a couple rules when I work with department heads and elected officials. The first and foremost one is no surprises. And we say that because if I'm aware of something that other people need to be aware of, I'll disclose it. I'm not going to hide it. There's no power play with me. I don't think that you have integrity when you play those kind of games. And I expect that to come from the other people I work with as well. But the other one is absolute honesty. And if we can't look each other in the eye and say exactly what is going on and say the same thing and be honest to other people, the same story is heard multiple times, then quite frankly, you're lying to them. And that's just something that I'm willing to do. And so it's very important. The city name is what people connotate with a city administrator position, and that name needs to remain pure in my mind. And so it's something I take very seriously and I'm very committed to.
Thank you. Andre.
All right, thank you. So what does integrity mean to me? Being a man of my word, learning from my mistakes and keeping my head held high, and learning through adversity. Positioning myself to basically ensure that everything that I do makes my family proud. So that would include my mom, my wife, my son, my daughter, and my grandkids. And I think as long as I do that from day in and day out, that right there is what integrity means to me. And I walk in my professional life and my personal life, and I think pretty proud of myself in doing that.
All right, thank you. Chad.
I would certainly agree that integrity is one of the most important values anyone, and especially a leader such as a city administrator, should possess and demonstrate regularly. I believe it's critical to lead with integrity in order to earn the trust of the team that we lead and the community that we serve. Quite simply, integrity means to me doing the right things, most importantly, doing the right things when nobody is watching. As a person, I've always held myself to a high level and standard of integrity. As Fitchburg's police chief, I am in perhaps the most visible and public role of all city employees. And with this in mind, I recognize how critical it is to act with integrity in all aspects of my personal and professional life. My reputation is extremely important to me, and the reputation of the city of Fitchburg and its employees is also extremely important to me. I'm aware my actions are a direct reflection of the city I serve, as well as myself. And I believe that I've done a lot in the last 20 years in my service to the city of Fitchburg to demonstrate that I lead with integrity and respect, and will continue to do so if selected to be the city administrator.
Thank you. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. To me, in a nutshell, integrity means, much like Chief Brecklin said, you do the right thing all of the time, even when the right thing is something that might not benefit you. Integrity is embodied by honest behavior, sound judgment, and an ethical approach to decision making. Having integrity absolutely requires leading by example, whether that be in adherence to city policies and procedures, always maintaining a professional demeanor, or being respectful and fair with everyone you encounter in the course of your professional and personal life. Integrity also requires one to be accountable for their own mistakes. Understanding and accepting the responsibility you have and the impact of your decisions is critical. A leader should always accept their responsibility and should never blame others for their own mistakes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And our fourth question that we gave him ahead of time anyway. Tell us about an area that you don't have a lot of experience in that is important in the role of city administrator and how you would manage to learn more. Andre.
Thank you. So for me, the first thing that came to mind was politics. And politics may not necessarily be my strong point, but I think it makes me unique in a sense. I'm always listening to understand, researching and asking questions to understand others' point of view, and I do vote and work the polls from time to time. So for me, although the politics may not necessarily be my strong point, doesn't necessarily mean that I can't learn the inner workings of the government. As far as managing on the state level and also at the city level, I think that's prepared me to be able to operate in an operational environment. And I think those are the attributes that I would bring to the table.
Thank you. Chad.
So one area I believe that I could certainly broaden experience in would be the area of economic development. As city administrator, I'll be fortunate to be able to learn from two professionals in our economic development department. They have many years of experience. They understand and appreciate the uniqueness and opportunities of the Fitchburg community and always seek to do what is right for the city of Fitchburg. In addition to our economic development team members, we're fortunate to have great people in our finance and our legal departments. And collectively, I would consider that team to be the experts in our city staff as it relates to economic development. I'd seek to learn from this group of professionals through regular conversation and interaction. I'm confident they can help me broaden my areas of experience as it relates to the vision and priorities the city has for economic development, the processes involved, tax incremental financing, and developer agreements, and also assist me in determining the role that I will play as it relates to economic development. Additionally, there are other professional resources out there that I could utilize through training courses or supplemental training workshops, professional organizations, and other areas to further broaden my experience in economic development. I think with the constraints of levy limits, it's important that our city continues to grow to meet the demands of providing costs of professional services, and therefore it's important to also grow appropriately and smartly. And I think by learning from this team of professionals and using the other resources that are available, I'll be able to help continue to shape the vision of Fitchburg's growth, again, in concert with that team of professionals and also our elected officials.
Matt.
So when I first read this question, the immediate thing that popped into my mind was planning and zoning rules and regulations. It's such a complex and technical area of city operations for which I have no real experience. And I'm sure that it will be frustrating at the beginning to be unable to provide a somewhat intelligent answer when somebody walks up and asks me why they can't build a 25-story tower next to their house. You just can't isn't an acceptable response. So to learn more, I would want to review all of the zoning decisions as they're made to gain experience and develop an understanding of the types of decisions and the reasons for those decisions so that over time I'm better prepared to answer the questions I might receive on the topic. I learn best by immersing myself in a subject, and I certainly need to do that in the planning and zoning area. And once again, I'm going to second something that Chief Brecklin said. We have a phenomenal group of individuals working for the city today. They have a tremendous amount of experience, and I would lean on them as I tried to learn more about the areas of the city that I am not that familiar with. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric?
There are many pathways to becoming a city administrator, and all four of us here represent potentially a different pathway to it. It's an honor to be a city administrator, and if I'm not chosen, it'll be an honor to have a fellow city administrator that I can communicate with at the various meetings here. But the one thing, and it's difficult to say this without humble bragging, but the pathway that I chose meant that I have been a city administrator for a decade already. So the things that we're kind of talking about that are lacking are things that I've already dealt with. It can be HR, it can be Act 10, it can be Act 137, it could be legal issues, employment issues, planning and zoning, finance, creating a budget, calculating a budget, public safety, all of that. I've had my fingers in those pots already. And so the question, that is facing the people is which pathway are we looking at for the city administrator to do? It doesn't mean I can do any one of their jobs, but it does mean I'm familiar with what they do in their jobs. And that's the important role. It also includes, public relations, working with the public, and politics. The thing that I lack, that there are at least two others here that definitely bring, because they are already in the organization, is experience within the city of Fitchburg. And that is absolutely key to be successful as a city administrator. And the knowledge of key stakeholders, the knowledge of employees, the knowledge of the history, why things are the way they are, and why, what are the roadblocks to move forward, perhaps, to go with that. That's something that I already answered the question earlier today, but you don't have the privilege to see that, is key. And that's the first thing that I would do in the first 90 days is lots of one-on-one meetings with the department heads, the elected officials, public, stakeholders, everybody, because that's knowledge that is absolutely vital. We cannot make recommendations to council for policies if I don't know the history and the reasons behind where we are and so on. So my biggest challenge here is quite frankly, the city of Fitchburg, which is not a place that I've worked in the past. I've experienced in Dane County, but not in Fitchburg, and that's the most important thing for me.
All right. Thank you. We have quite a bit of time here for questions from the audience. I have a couple otherwise that were submitted, but I do want to give people that are willing to come here for this the opportunity to ask questions of these gentlemen. So if anyone would have a question, raise their hand. I'm happy to take those questions. If not, I've got a couple that I can ask myself, but I want to make sure that if there's something that you're interested in learning more about, that we have the opportunity. All right. Yeah, let's start with Tom Thorson first, and we can go back to Tom here. Yes, what's your question?
Yes, how would the candidates see preserving the farmland that we have, while at the same time, the growth, not having the sprawl? How would they manage that issue to make sure that the city maintains a lot of its character?
So how manage the farmland that we have with the growth demands on that farmland and balancing that and the growth? All right. I will continue down the same path. So Chad, if you'd like to go first, that'd be great.
I'd love to go first. Thank you. So I think that's a great question, and it truly represents the uniqueness that Fitchburg brings. Not only is it a diverse community socioeconomically, but it's a diverse community geographically. And that is one of the points that draw many people to Fitchburg, is the fact that you have urban, suburban, and rural components to the city. And I think, utilizing the answers from previous questions is, what's the comprehensive development plan suggest or say that the city is going to be utilizing? What are the vision and priorities for growth that the elected officials and the mayor have set forth? And then it's working with the planning and zoning department, the economic development department, elected officials, and our community to help chart that growth and determine where it's going to be within, the urban service area, or if we're going to need to extend the urban service area, and work to try to balance as many needs as we certainly can do so to allow appropriate growth, but also to still preserve that rural aspect of Fitchburg that I think so many of us really enjoy.
Matt?
I'm going to mention the city's comp plan as well, because if you read through that document, it does place a premium on the rural areas of our city, and particularly the farmland that's in the southwest area of the city. It's some of the best farmland in the state, and we need to preserve that, and we need to preserve the character of the community. It's in our history. And so I think that plan, which was just rewritten within the last year and a half, is a really good indication of where the city's going, and I support the plan and it's a 30-year plan. So I support that 30-year plan. I support keeping that distinction between the urban areas north of the urban service area and the rural areas in the south. Like Chief Breckland mentioned, it just makes the community really, really unique and really, really interesting.
Eric?
For many communities, a sense of place is very important. What makes it unique to live in Fitchburg versus other places? Why do people choose to live here versus living elsewhere? And that answer is different for lots of people, but Fitchburg is lucky enough, based on its history in terms of incorporation, to have what other cities just do not have, and that is urban farmland, which is not in a township to be annexed. It's already here. It's already in the city. And so that is a character that needs to be protected and preserved because it is part of, I think, why people choose to live here in this area is, as you heard, it's that dichotomy. Under the guideline of being absolutely truth-telling, and you've heard it here before, in terms of the comp plan, one of the balances that we do have to face is that cities have to grow just to provide the same level of services to its communities. You know, even a city that doesn't extend a mile of streets, that next year it costs more to maintain that street than it did the previous year, to plow the street, to maintain it, to chip seal, to crack fill, what have you. And so just to tread water, cities have to grow. And that does not mean it has to sprawl, it means it has to grow. And so what I'm pleased to see here is the fact the comp plan was already updated, goes through 2020, and it does highlight protecting those areas that, as you already heard mentioned, the farmland, controlling the urban services area to something that's affordable, that the community can afford to provide services to, protects the character of what makes Fitchburg unique. When it comes to development and when developers wish to come forward with perhaps a plan that increases sprawl, the comprehensive plan is the first document that you show and say, this is what we saw as forward thinking. This is what we planned. This has public input and council approval as well how we see the community looking in the future. If a development doesn't fit that comprehensive plan, then it's probably not a good development to be used. You know, why waste all that effort that people put into putting the comprehensive plan together to protect the character of Fitchburg and just throw it out the window?
Thank you. Andre?
Thank you. I also think it's important to preserve the farmland. I think it's very important to ensure that the zoning is appropriately done. Meet internally with the economic development manager or director. I think there's an importance to planning well in advance, well ahead, and oftentimes we are able to plan whether it's 5, 10, 15 years out. So I think we have to ensure that in doing that we make sure that we preserve what's important to our community. And Fitchburg, as my counterparts were saying, it is a unique area, the urban, the rural, and the suburban areas. So with that long-lasting history, we want to ensure that we're doing everything that we can as a governing body to preserve that for all of our communities.
Good. All right. Tom, you had a question?
Sure. So one of the important roles, I think, with the administrator role is interacting with elected officials. And I'm curious how you would handle or how you have handled an individual personal disagreement with an issue or policy that one or a group of elected officials is advocating for.
All right, so how you handle disagreement with elected officials on issues. That's never happened here, Tom. I'm not sure why you're asking this question, but Matt, if you'd like to go first, that'd be great.
Sure. It kind of depends on what part of the process we're in. If we're in the deliberative process, if we're talking about policy, we're talking about planning, we're talking about the future, then certainly it would be my hope to develop a relationship with each elected official that would allow for a free exchange of information, to respect one another, to agree to disagree, to have conflict, because conflict can be worthwhile. It can drive innovation. It can drive ideas. So, I would absolutely expect to create those relationships with the elected officials to be able to have those difficult conversations and disagree. I would also make sure that that relationship allowed for city staff to provide their advice, not to try to steer the direction of the council or a particular elected official, but at least to be able to weigh in on the issue at hand, because the city staff are experts in their areas, and they understand the history, and they understand the impact of these issues. If a decision is made, and I disagree with that decision, but it is a direction from the elected officials or the mayor, then it's my duty as the city administrator to proceed with the implementation of that as the council and the mayor intended. The city council, the elected officials, make the policy. We implement the policy, and that's an important distinction that we need to understand, that that's our role in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric?
It's a brilliant answer. The International Cities and Counties Managers Association has their code of ethics, and one of those code of ethics is absolutely, as you've heard here before, the role of the administrator is to administer the policies created by the elected bodies, not to create policies. Creating policies is not just implementing my will on the public, but it is also charting a desired course through the deliberative process. And that is a no-no. My job is to advise. My job is to become knowledgeable, provide best practices, comparables, measurables, things that we can look at to maybe what makes a good idea, but it's not necessarily to guide or to advocate for one side or the other. And as you said, once a decision is made, it's absolutely in the hands of the administrator to administer that policy, but it's not to undermine that policy, it's to administer that policy. There may come times, though, that there may be disagreements about things that are more or less factual. So open meeting, public records, things like that would have some liability to the city. That there are in statutes, there is no real room for interpretation outside. Sometimes the elected officials or other employees may disagree with sort of policies that we have in order to protect the city. In that case, it's a little bit different. We're not creating policy that way, but it would be a very difficult conversation to have, but one that I do have on a regular basis as to this is the way things need to be, and this is why. And this is the risk that you perhaps expose yourself if you continue on the path that you are doing. That only comes through a relationship of trust, and that trust comes from open communication, honest communication, building relationships one-on-one, which is, again, something that I've done elsewhere, and I've had those conversations about, with officials on a frequent, not say frequent basis, but on a regular basis when need to.
Thank you. Andre?
Sure. Thank you. I would handle those conversations with grace and calmness, with respect, because of course everyone has their opportunity to provide their concerns or their satisfaction for certain policies. I think it's very important to look at both sides of the story, and ultimately we may again agree to disagree. But if I'm not in a position to change a policy that was already made, I would just ensure that I'd heard that person out. And granted, you have individuals that are not able to express themselves calmly, but again, I have to ensure that I remain a professional at all times. So again, I would definitely listen to the individual, just ensure that we're all on equal playing field as far as having that conversation. And ultimately, those are difficult conversations to have when someone wants something their way and they cannot have it. But at the end of the day, we're all here for the same thing, and that's to ensure that our community is taken care of, in addition to the governing body for the city of Fitchburg.
Thank you. Chad?
So one area that can often be the subject of significant debate and disagreement is how to provide public safety to community. So I've had many conversations over my time in public safety service with community members, with elected officials, and we may have had differing viewpoints on how to provide public safety services. What I think is important to do, I find colleagues who are finalists have covered a lot of the bases on this one. But the fact of the matter is we would want to have open relationship or positive relationships that are based on open communication and trust. And depending again on what portion of the decision-making process we're in, I think it would be important if a decision has not yet been made to have conversation with the elected official that I'm currently maybe not aligning with their vision, to engage in that conversation, to share perspective. Where are they coming from? Why do they feel the way that they do? What basis do they have for that? And then also to share my basis for where I'm at currently. At the end of the day, though, as other folks have said, my job is not to make policy for the city of Fitchburg. My job is to carry out the policy that our elected officials have determined. And absent that policy being unethical, illegal, or some other violation of a policy or some unnecessary exposure to the city, I'll work with the elected officials and city staff to help carry out that policy to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Other questions? Kimberly, you're our media person here. I'm going to put you on the spot. No? All right. Other people have questions? I have a couple I can ask as well then, if there's no one. All right. One of the questions I have is, have you had an opportunity to review the city's Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative? And if so, were there portions that caught your attention more so than others? And please expand on your impressions. And I believe we are with Eric first.
Awkwardly, I have not. So part of having open honest conversations is to admit something, and I have not had that opportunity to review that aspect of the city. So I don't want to continue on and perhaps guess what healthy neighborhood initiatives would be. But if we're talking about looking at what we're hoping to accomplish even ourselves is looking at each diverse group that we have within the city of Onalaska and provide opportunities for interacting with them to increase the health that we have. So, do we have food deserts? Do we have after-school care that's inappropriate or not enough? Do we have playgrounds in the right places? Then that's something that I would be supportive of, and hopefully we can continue on. If I'm totally guessing wrong, I apologize.
All right, thank you. Andre.
I cannot even sit here and tell a fib, but no, I have not reviewed that policy on health initiatives. Again, similar to my colleague Eric, I can speak on what I've been a part of in the past, but to answer your question, no, I have not reviewed that policy.
All right, thank you. Chad?
So I also won't say that have read this document, but I obviously, in my time with the city, I'm familiar with this program, and I know that it's administered by Wade Thompson, our planning and zoning department, and the council has oversight over the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative. I have talked with Wade about this particular initiative that the city has, and it aligns very well with improving our community in specific neighborhoods. The Northwest Jamestown neighborhood, Belmar Hills, Duns Marsh, and then our north neighborhood in Fitchburg. And this program is, I think, innovative in that the city, which was a controversial move several years ago, transitioned funding to particular organizations to a grant program to make more community-based organizations eligible to potentially receive funding. So what the city council has done is create, I think, approximately a $50,000 fund that's available every year for community-based organizations to apply for and then provide those services to those specific neighborhoods. And if I recall correctly, there was an article in the most recent Fitchburg Star that indicated that the requests for funding, I think, were probably at least 3 to 4 times greater than what the available funds were. And a number of those grants are now being awarded again this year, and that the city council will ultimately make the determination of who will receive funding based upon the recommendation of Wade Thompson and the Healthy Neighborhoods Initiative work group that's been put together. I think, again, it's an innovative program that does allow for our community-based organizations to make improvements, provide services and resources in targeted specific neighborhoods within the city that can most benefit from those resources. And I think it's another example of Fitchburg's commitment to improving diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you. Matt?
Thank you. Much like everyone else up here, I haven't read the document. Chad stole a little bit of my thunder there because he kind of rehashed what I know about the project. But I will say that one of the unique elements of that project that I think is really worthwhile is that the project funds a couple of people who are out in those neighborhoods, who are interacting with the community and reporting back to Wade, who's managing the project, but also to the city about the activities in the neighborhood, what is working, what isn't, what we should focus on, what we shouldn't. And that's a really unique and interesting project. There was a question I received earlier today about a lot of us know how to manage a city, how to run a city, but how do we build a community? And that was a really, really interesting question to me because that's the ultimate goal here. We move beyond just the mechanics of building our city and getting things done, plowing our roads and chip sealing our streets. And we move to building a community. And this Healthy Neighborhoods initiative, putting people out in the community and giving us the insight of their experiences out there is tremendously important. And I think it's something that we should not only continue, but we should expand upon.
Anyone else come up with a question? Make sure I give you opportunity if you want. I got another one otherwise, if you don't. All right. Another question I have is, what role do you feel parks, recreation, library, and the senior center services play in the health and wellness of a community? And I believe we are with Andre first.
Sure. Thank you. I think they play an important role. I personally utilize the Fitchburg Library, and I think it's amazing. The parks, I use the McKee Park. My son loves that park as well. Not that we don't have parks in Madison as well, but I think these outlets are very important for families, for our youth, and I think even the bike trails are great as well. So I think creating those resources for your citizens is very important to allow them to have the opportunity to utilize these tools that are available, and I think they're great.
Thank you. Chad.
So I think that when you talk about departments like Parks and Recs, the Senior Center, and the library, I'm fortunate to have good working relationships with all those department heads. And I would describe those as really value-added services that the city is able to provide that really creates additional appeal for our city. You know, Fitchburg lacks its own school district. We're served by 3 different school districts. We don't have a traditional downtown because of our geographical area. And what that does create is it potentially diminishes those opportunities for communities to come together. And by having amenities and departments such as the library, the senior center, an extensive park system like we have within Fitchburg, it creates those spaces where community can come together that we are maybe lacking because of that lack of a single service of a school district where somebody could go to an event at the school on an evening and connect with communities. So these are options that are available for our community. They're well maintained. They're well supported. They all have great staffs in those departments that help provide those services to our community. And again, I think it's a valuable way for the city to help create space for community to come together.
Matt.
So one of the things that I think is really interesting about that question is if you look at the departments that they singled out, Parks and Recreation, the library, and the senior center, is that spans every generation in our community. Very young children using the library, to elderly adults in our community trying to stay on their own. And those services are essential for the community to provide. It allows us to reach out and reach everybody in our community. And the other thing that was interesting to me about those 3 departments is I can tell you that the leaders of those departments, the department heads, are some of the most committed people in our organization. I'm constantly amazed at the level of enthusiasm and interest that those people and the staff that are involved in all of those departments display on a daily basis. So in some ways, I look at those departments and I look at those services, the beautiful parks we have available, the wonderful library we have across the street, the amazing resources for the older residents of our community at the senior center. And I think that's really some of the best work that we can do.
Thank you, Eric.
That is a really tough question to be number 4 on. They all spoke so well on the importance of that. So perhaps a slightly different take on that question beyond health and wellness to relate to a conversation we had earlier today. One thing that perhaps, if anything, Fitchburg lacks is a sense of place. And as we talked about, a place where the community comes together are those parks, recreation, the physical parks itself, the splash pad. I've used it with my kids in the past. Senior center, community center activities, things that bring people together, park shelters, and so on. We talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The question often is though, that I think remains unasked, is inclusion into what? What are we seeking inclusion in? And the answer is inclusion in the community. So therefore, define the community. What makes the community? We need a sense of place for what the community is. Those programs, more than anything, help create that sense. When you live in Fitchburg, when you are participating in the Parks and Rec programs, when you sign up and it's the Fitchburg Parks and Rec program, it's not Madison, it's Fitchburg, you get that sense of place again. You start identifying yourself as one member of a diverse community, but a community, one community. And those programs are vital to help establish that.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. Yes, go ahead, Joe.
Should I just?
Sure, right in the mic, great.
Might as well take advantage of the technology. Hello, I'm Joe Pulmacher. I'm the City of Fitchburg Fire Chief. And one question that I have for you is basically a question. Right, it's on.
There, now it is.
Hi, my name is Joe Pulvermacher. I'm the City of Fitchburg Fire Chief, and I have basically one question that we ask our membership. It's actually a one question, multiple parts. I continuously challenge them to consider leadership by example, leadership at all levels, and service with humility. So I'm wondering, from a city administrator standpoint, what does that mean to you and the application of your role in the community?
All right, so those things were service with humility.
So leadership, leading by example, leadership at all levels, and service with humility.
All right. We are back to Chad. You're first.
I'd like to thank Joe for stepping up to give that odd-numbered question so that I get to go first again. So thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. So I'll try to address each of these 3 points in a relatively short and concise manner to allow my colleagues time here prior to 7:30. So clearly leading by example is going to be important. The leader of any organization or group sets the tone for the entire organization. And if that leader is not fulfilling their responsibilities, their duties, acting with integrity, acting with respect, acting with collaboration, and utilizing a service mindset, it's going to be hard to expect the rest of the team members to also lead or perform their duties in service to the community in a good fashion. When you talk about leadership at all levels, I think that is critically important. One of the things we talk about in our department is, while there are formal leaders within our department because of titles and roles, sometimes the most powerful and influential leaders are the informal leaders, the ones that do not have titles, but yet have an extensive value that they bring because of their training, their experience, the persons or people that they are. And the more that we can create those informal leaders, the more strong our organization is. And in the aspect of the city perspective, it is, we can strengthen that net of service that we would provide to our entire community by creating those leaders throughout all levels of the organization. And then getting to humility, I think anyone that takes themselves too seriously and can't have some measure of self-deprecating humor towards themselves, be humble in their interactions with others, give credit where credit is due and not take it where it's not earned. Also acting in such a way that when team members make mistakes, that you take responsibility for those mistakes on behalf of those team members, particularly the ones that you lead. So I think it's important, again, to lead by example, create leaders throughout all levels of the organization, both formal and informal, and then lead with humility, be humble, without a doubt, admit when you're wrong, admit when you don't know an answer. A lot of us have done that, if not all of us have done that when we've been up here, so thank you.
Thank you. Matt?
So I think that this question kind of goes back to the question on integrity, right? And so I would say simply that model the behavior you expect in others. Behave in the same way that you expect others to behave, not only to you, but to the community. And then understand that this is an entire team effort. It's not about you. We have a tremendous number of really talented people working for our organization. And quite honestly, most of our achievements are because of them, not because of the city administrator. And so remember as you go through this process that you're not alone. You're standing alongside a whole number of other dedicated professionals who work very hard every day to achieve the results that we see. And acknowledge that and appreciate that from all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric?
Chief, I'm not sure if you've had courses in servant leadership, but the question is awfully familiar when you look at that. Viterbo University in La Crosse, just south of Onalaska, has a master's program in that, and a good number of people that I work with, including the mayor, have taken that. And of course, so servant leadership really speaks to your third point there. I'll start with the leadership aspect of that by leading by example. As you've heard already, I don't think I can answer the question any better, but but especially at being a calling in the public sector, you understand that you're never off the clock. You are the city administrator, and it doesn't have to be city administrators. Every position within the city, you are that position all the time. You represent the city of Fitchburg for it's 24/7. And so to be a leader in that situation understands that in all aspects of your life, both personal and professional, you need to have the utmost ethical and moral leadership. And by doing so, you can create that all the way through your organization. And that's natural. Lead at all levels is, as you heard too, you need to train staff to understand that they are leaders. And they are leaders if they like it or not. Leadership isn't always necessarily positive. You can also have negative leadership. And if you have someone that brings negative energy to an organization, they could be leading people. A favorite example was when you have a new employee, if you don't have a mentor for that new employee, a mentor that is positive for that employee, you may end up having a mentor by default that is not a positive mentor. But as a leader, is going to lead that new employee down the wrong path. So it's very important to understand that all your employees are leaders one way or the other. It's being able to educate which direction you want them to be leading other people. And the service with humility, there's two parts to that. There's a service aspect of that. It's service. Service is still being a leader, but it's understanding your role is to provide that service. To support the staff that I report, that reports to me, and to support the elected officials, support the public. It's always a support level of function of that. And of course, there's the humility aspect of that. It is a gift to do what I do. It is not earned. It was just somehow I got lucky or what happens. It's an honor to do what I do, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. Understand that. Know it can be taken away at any moment in time. And as you heard too, so the role isn't to take accolades. The role is to support the staff and provide. Let the accolades fall to who does the work. That's the department heads. That's the staff. That's the elected official. And if something does go south, then step up and be a leader. And then, say, what happened? That's on me. Did I provide the right tools? Did I provide the right direction? Did I have the right people in place? If not, that's on me. Then make that happen. But have humility as you do that. And understand that we're just lucky to be here, and it's an honor to serve.
Thank you. Andre?
Thank you. I think it's very important to lead by example. It's all how you carry yourself. So you can be humble and confident at the same time without being arrogant. So I think even when you have individuals that are reporting to you or looking to you for guidance, to ensure that whatever it is that you're expecting your staff to do, that you're willing to do those things as well. So I can't expect someone to jump on the phone and take calls or go out and talk to community members if I'm not going to do the same. And I think it's a humbling effect because you have some individuals that may be more of a authoritarian leader. But I'm one where I like to be in there with the individuals, roll up the sleeves, tighten up the bootstraps, and get out there and get the work done. As far as leadership at all levels, I think everyone has a leader inside of them. You have some individuals that are extroverts and introverts. And I think we just have to, as leaders, ensure that we can sort of create that nudge to bring that out of them. You have individuals that are very knowledgeable, depending on what discipline that they're supporting. So again, as a leader, we have to bring that out of those individuals, and also you have to think about succession planning, because none of us will be in these roles forever. So we're all here for a season. So we have to ensure that when we're done, that our legacy is the staff that are in place will continue to run the city while we're gone. And service with humility, I think it's very important, again, to be humble and to get out there. We have a number of individuals that do not volunteer, they do not mentor, they're not in the community, they just want to go to work, put in their 8 hours and go home. But I think it's more to that. We have to ensure that we're positioning ourselves to give back to the community and to help reach one, teach one. So I think that's important as well.
Thank you. Please give these people a round of applause. It's a pretty intense 2-day process here that we're putting them through, and it's been a long day for them. You are welcome to stay and mingle and talk with them individually, but also just take the opportunity to thank Sarah Olson from HR and all her effort and work in finding 4 excellent, very qualified candidates. So thank you, Sarah, as well. And so thank you all for coming. Please take the opportunity to mingle with these people more and let us know what you think, but I appreciate it. This is a very important position here in the city, and we're very fortunate to have 4 very qualified individuals. Have a good night.